Oh God, this guy. Noah Samsen, ladies and gentlemen. I generally don't take advice on what constitutes anti-Palestinian racism from people who justify bombing hospitals. Here's you doing that. I'm sorry, I cited international law. Let's watch the clip.
That is part of the reason why Israel is bombing.
Surely this clip is not going to be very selectively edited, guys. Surely, no.
Hospitals.
Does anybody dispute
Bombing hospitals is a war crime.
No, it's not.
Okay? Bombing hospitals is a war crime. In your conversation
To be clear, and I'm not saying all hospitals should be bombed. I just said right there in the clip, and I'm not saying all hospitals should be bombed. Okay, but there's no such thing as like a building that is exempt from bombing if it's a valid military target.
Gone back and forth.
I'm not sticking up for bombing every hospital. I'm saying if you set up shop, I even say it in the clip. I say in the clip, I'm not justifying bombing every hospitals. I guess he just disagrees with the Geneva Conventions. I guess we're just throwing those out the window. No more international law, I guess. But I mean, if you're going to do that, then I guess you can't call Netanyahu a war criminal anymore, because I guess fucking we just get rid of international law, you know? Is that what we're doing? Are we just throwing the conventions out? I mean, like, you tell me. What are we supposed to do here? I thought that those were a pretty good kind of like roadmap for how to not, you know, repeat the atrocities that took place as a result of the total war of like World War II, where we're just carpet bombing Dresden, you know, or Tokyo. How was it a valid military target? I don't even know what you mean by it. I'm not specifically referring to any particular military strike. I'm just saying that if a hospital, there's like, you can look it up. It's in the Geneva Conventions. There are certain buildings that are meant for, you know, civilian infrastructure that are that have protections from being bombed in a war. Like you can't just target a hospital. Like let's say there's, you know, 200 Hamas fighters and they're injured as a part of some Israeli offensive, and then they go to a hospital to be treated. You can't bomb that hospital. That would be a war crime. That would be a war crime, obviously. However, if a military force such as Hamas stores weapons, or they store healthy militants in a hospital, or they launch rockets from a hospital, the hospital loses protections. That is what international law says. And for good reason. The idea that any military, or rather, the idea that any building can be just permanently, unconditionally immune from bombing, that doesn't work. Can you think about it for more than 2 seconds as to like why that obviously doesn't work? Why don't I create a hypothetical and you tell me what you think? All right, let's say America, let's say Donald Trump, he gets sick and tired of Canada. He says, you know what? Trudeau, or I don't know, who's the new prime minister? Canada. I'm so sick of their shit. They're always sassing me on social media. They're always savaging me in the media. You know what? I want to nuke Canada. Here's what we're going to do, though. We're going to set up shop in hospitals along the US-Canadian border. We're going to move our entire military infrastructure into hospitals along the border, and then we're going to launch nuclear weapons into Canada. Can Canada retaliate? You tell me. Can they retaliate in that spot or not? Mandela, that's a question for you. That's a question for whoever else was in Ham. Mandela and Ham. Can Canada retaliate in that spot? Yes or no? Not a good comparison. I'm not comparing it to anything. What do you think I'm comparing it to? No, because it would make their argument look bad. I think everybody intuitively understands how fucking ridiculous this is. Now, do I believe every claim that Israel has made with respect to hospitals in Gaza? At this point, I don't know how I could. At this point, I don't know how, or you could, not even at this point, you can go back much further. There was already enough destruction much earlier than this time, but I don't know how anyone could just take Israel at their word, quite frankly, given their track record, given the fact that they don't really do much to meaningfully punish war criminals in their own country. What did Lonerbox say was the longest sentence anyone ever received for war crimes in Israel? It was like 3 months or something like that. And when you look at the sheer destruction that we see in Gaza, I don't know about you guys, I don't take Israel at their word that every single one of their strike was justified on civilian infrastructure. I just don't. But my point in this clip here, which is just wild, because like in the clip I'm saying I'm not saying it's justified to bomb like any hospital. Like I say it very clearly in the clip. And he just like, these people are so fucking dishonest. Everybody can see it too. Like I feel like everybody outside of their niche online, like hyper niche, purity tested into oblivion online community, everybody outside of that community knows how fucking dishonest and deranged these people are. They just lie constantly. Ham. I don't think you're wrong on technical grounds, but your response in the clip feels like cold comfort and kind of like a non-ideal place to stake your flag, not great optics. Fuck your optics. I don't care. I don't care, man. I just don't care. I also want to say that I'm also not saying that Hamas never operates out of hospitals. It's documented. We know they've done this. And in those cases, Hamas committed the war crime. Do you understand that? Do you understand if Hamas puts a single fucking healthy military age guy that's in the Hamas like militant group in a hospital, they've now made a target out of that hospital. Do you understand that? Anytime they've stored munitions in a hospital, they committed a war crime. Anytime they've fired rockets from a hospital, they committed a war crime. If you're going to be upset about a military force that does something to put civilians in harm's way to the extent that it's a war crime, you should be upset that Hamas has committed war crimes with respect to civilian infrastructure. So a healthy soldier in a hospital means it's fair game. You still have to follow, like international law also has conditions with respect to proportionality. Like it has to be a proportionate response. So if it's a single militant and then you bomb a hospital and then like 200 people get killed, then that would be a war crime because you're not respecting the principle of proportionality whatsoever. If you store 20 if you hide like 20 militants in a hospital or 100 militants or 200 militants, you have now made that hospital a valid military target. You have committed the war crime in that spot. Ian says, just because retaliation is justified, that doesn't mean leveling the entire block. You're on thin ice, Ian. You're on thin ice, buddy. I'm this close. Don't make me do it. What did I just say? What the f did I just say? What did I just say? 2 seconds ago, I literally said that. Why do you feel the need to clarify that to me? Do you think I'm implying that like any kind of response doesn't need to be proportionate? Jesus Christ, why do you feel the need to clarify? These people are just like fucking dishonest as fuck. And in the case of Noah, he straight up said, protests aren't enough. We have close physical proximity to these politicians and propagandists, and we need to escalate. This guy is straight up doing stochastic terrorism with his audience. Meanwhile, he's not putting his ass on the line. He's not doing a Luigi Mangione. He's not risking his own personal safety or freedom to do this radical action. He's like nudging his audience to escalate with politicians and Israeli propagandists that they have close physical proximity to. He's like nudging his audience to do that. He's not the one fucking 3D printing a gun with a silencer and going out there and doing crazy shit. Why does anyone have respect for this guy? I don't understand. It's just like textbook explicit stochastic terrorism. It's two articles, I think. It's Article 18 and 19 of the Geneva Convention. Article 18 of the Geneva Convention. Let's have a gander. Civilian hospitals organized to give care to the wounded and sick, the infirm, and maternity cases may in no circumstances be the object of attack, but shall at times be respected and protected by the parties to the conflict. States which are parties to a conflict shall provide all civilian hospitals with certificates showing that they are civilian hospitals and that the buildings which they occupy are not used for any purpose which would deprive these hospitals of protection in accordance with Article 19. Civilian hospitals shall be marked by means of the emblem provided for in Article 38 of the Geneva Convention for the amelioration of the condition of the wounded and sick in armed forces in the field of August 12, 1949, but only if so authorized by the state. The parties to the conflict shall, insofar as military considerations permit, take the necessary steps to make the distinctive emblems indicating civilian hospitals clearly visible to the enemy, land, air, and naval forces in order to obviate the possibility of any hostile action in view of the dangers to which hospitals may be exposed by being close to military objectives. It is recommended that such hospitals be situated as far as possible from such objectives. Article 19, the protection to which civilian hospitals are entitled shall not cease unless they are used to commit outside their humanitarian duties acts harmful to the enemy. Protection may, however, cease only after due warning has been given, naming in all appropriate cases a reasonable time limit, and after such warnings has remained unheeded. The fact that sick or wounded members of the armed forces are nursed in these hospitals, or the presence of small arms and ammunition taken from such combatants and not yet handed to the proper service shall not be considered acts harmful to the enemy. So if you have someone who's in Hamas and they're wounded and they come in and they got like an AK strapped to their chest, that doesn't mean like, oh, they brought in weapons. That means you can bomb the hospital. Article 18 is the one that grants protections for the hospitals. Article 19 covers how those protections can be lost. Can we just be grown-ups when we're having these conversations? Can we just be grown-ups? Can I get you to not assume the least charitable interpretation of something that I've said? If I cite international law, that doesn't mean that I'm saying every time Israel has ever bombed a hospital that it was justified. Thinking adults should be able to have this conversation. Appealing to the legal convention for defense of a bombing of a hospital is a hard position to win in the court of public opinion. I don't care. Don't you get, I don't care. The court of public opinion, I guarantee you 99% of people agree with that convention if you explain it to them. I guarantee you 99% of people are going to agree with that. It's bad for optics for these deranged lunatics who are not honest. These are complete bad faith actors. They're self-avowed propagandists. They don't give a about nuance or the truth or anything like that. These people are not serious. I don't care about what they think about me. Hutch said, bombing hospitals is not against the Geneva Convention when certain circumstances are present. I concede those circumstances were present at Al-Shifa, but there have been no independently verified evidence of such with the other 15 hospitals, medical facilities bombed by Israel. I don't even dispute that. I don't even dispute that. They haven't made, I think they only made available or public evidence that munitions were being stored in a hospital. There was a tunnel underneath. I think they only did that for one hospital. And for the rest of them, they communicate their intelligence to like their American counterparts. They share that intelligence, you know, and I guess they can just say like, well, it's all classified. We don't need to go public with any of this. So that's what's going on. They're doing these strikes. They're showing like Americans their intelligence to corroborate why the hospitals are valid targets, but they're not making that information public. And quite frankly, I believe people have a right to be skeptical of their claims. I don't dispute that. I'm skeptical of their claims. I think you're letting your vitriol towards Hassan and Noah cloud your ability to respond without flying off the handle. Do you understand that? Okay. It's kind of infuriating when people dishonestly frame something that you've said to suggest that you're okay with war crimes. Like that is a disgusting thing to accuse someone of. But for these people, and for some of the people that show up in my chat, for these people, they do it so flippantly. Do you understand that? They accuse people that don't toe their line 100%. They accuse them of literally wanting like babies killed with bombs. It's such a disgusting thing to say. And that's like their go-to. That's what they do to like smear you, because they've made their entire identity about like their particular form of Palestinian activism. It's their entire identity at this point. And so as such, they have these like markers, you know, these badges that they have to wear to indicate that they think certain things. And so they determine anyone who doesn't wear every single badge that they demand as a part of their activism, they're the fucking enemy. You can have someone who agrees with them on 99% of the issue when it comes to Israel Gaza, but if they disagree with like literally 1%, that's enough for them. And they're like, boom, you support war crimes. You want bombs going off in hospitals. It's the way that they try to smear you, and I don't care. I can't stop them from doing it. I'm not being dishonest. I'm just talking about the truth. I don't think that it's just amazing to me that they just so flippantly say this shit.